think we need to look at the different modules that can be pulled in together to help people to learn in their style and with their personality, their mindset, and the way that their brains work.
Stephen calls himself lucky to have exited his business just right before the COVID-19 outbreak, but not for the reasons you think. Hear why passionate entrepreneurs jump right back in despite outside circumstances and why you should too. Hi, my name is Andre Chandra, founder and CEO of Propelo Media. Leaders rise up in challenging times. In today's Ask an Expert series, my guest is Stephen Shortt, who founded and recently sold Alpha College for Language, an ESL, an English as a Second Language business. Entrepreneurs can certainly benefit from luck and good timing, but it takes so much more than these to be successful. Let's listen to his story. Stephen Shortt, thank you for joining us on this podcast. Can you tell our audience who you are and what you do?
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen. I'm from Dublin in Ireland, the center of the known universe, the best place in the world to be. So for many, many years, for about 30 years, I was involved in a family business, which was an English language school, or in the US, it's called an ESL school, where we taught English as a second language or English as a foreign language to international students. At our peak, we would have been doing about 50 to 55 nationalities every year, where we would get students from all over the world coming to improve their English with us. Typically, we were at the more executive, professional end of the market. And we ran summer camps for teenagers, where we had residential summer camps and we had host family summer camps. Everything was underpinned by really rigorous, internationally accredited academic standards. So we had a really strong reputation for customer support, student support, and really looking after people. We had a lot of repeat business, and most of our partners, they would send their own kids to us instead of to somebody else.
Right.
So we exited that at the end of last year, just before the craziness happened. Took a while. There was a lot of due diligence done and a lot of different rounds of due diligence. And now we're focusing more on psychometrics and personality profiling and leadership development.
Got it. So as I understand it, this is more than just learning English, but also perhaps the customs, because you're catering to business professionals, right? So maybe business customs, how do you meet people, shaking hands as opposed to bowing and so on and so forth. Is that?
Yeah, so we would have done a lot of cultural stuff. So there would have been a lot of learning cultural norms and being able to take part in international communication. So international communication was a big emphasis for what we used to do.
Okay, got it. Now, even though you've exited the business, maybe you can just share generally how the pandemic has hit Ireland and Europe as a whole, and how these businesses that require kind of personal face-to-face interactions have been impacted.
Well, over the last couple of months, obviously, I've had a lot of calls, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of phone calls with friends from the industry, former competitors. And I've been called everything from an evil genius to stuff that's far less complimentary for getting out on time. And obviously, I didn't see the pandemic coming, but the timing was very lucky for us. So yeah, I mean, all the schools have closed across the English-speaking world anyway, and I know friends who have Spanish language schools and Italian language schools. Everything is closed. Things are starting to open back up again now, and in Ireland, the official reopening date for English language schools, I think, is the 10th of August right now. So everybody's doing their deep cleans and making sure their social distancing is ready and their classrooms are every desk is 2 meters apart and things like this. So they're putting in all that stuff at the moment. But how many people are going to be willing to travel internationally to come and take part in this cultural program? It still is very much up in the air. Nobody has a clear view on it yet.
Got it. Now, just talking about the kind of the education and learning industry as a whole, obviously you have a lot of experience in it, and you still have your ear to the ground on these things. Where do you see the whole industry is going from here on out? I think you mentioned some, just now with some of these social distancing measures.
Mm.
Make sure that the desks are far apart and so on and so forth. Any other big things that you can see on the horizon for this industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on whether we're talking about, let's say, traditional high school, primary school, middle school, whatever is the system in the US. But for 18 and younger, people who are doing normal school as we understand it, or whether you're doing these continuous professional development type programs or learning a new skill or new language. One of the things that I was really interested in, and we did a lot of work on when we were still in the industry, was project-based learning. So instead of the traditional learn by rote, like learn the facts and the figures, as opposed to being able to put that stuff into context. So we did a lot of stuff where we would, especially for English language, we would make it real. So every week, every class would be working on projects to use English in the real world, as opposed to just learning the cat is on the chair and the man is asking directions to the train station. The usual stuff that we all remember when we were learning a foreign language for the first time. So we would try to make it real, and using a lot of stuff called project-based learning. This is a big movement within language learning, and I think should be a movement within all kinds of education, being able to take the information and not just learn the information, but actually know what to do with that information. And when you get new information, how do we assess that and how do we plug that into our real lives? So I think a lot of some of the things that have been happening, like the flipped classroom, is one of these very, very popular ideas and new ways of looking at things, and that's using technology to our advantage, where the lecture type piece of the content and just regurgitating the information, the teacher records it once. Students do that at home. They watch that half an hour class, if you like,
Right.
and then in the school they do their homework where they're actually putting it into practice. And when they have questions, the teacher's there, and the teacher's almost like a facilitator as opposed to a professor, if you like. I think that's something that could be very, very interesting, because I think the world is moving that way anyway.
Right.
And a lot of teachers, especially in for teenagers, I know my wife is a teacher, and my kids are in primary and secondary school here in Ireland, and the adaptation was pretty quick because we had no choice but to adapt to online classes. There are hurdles with it, and when people don't have to stay at home, especially the parents don't have to stay at home, it's going to be tougher to have a 10-year-old staying at home on their own, learning from home. So there's those kinds of challenges. But when we're talking about the technology side of things, I think being able to use some of these tools is really important, but the tool itself is not the savior of anything. It still comes back to the teacher and having that knowledge and being able to use
Right.
that tool effectively.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. The switch that you just described. So the learning can be done from home and use that time together, make it more efficient by asking things that maybe need to be more interactive or require some kind of back and forth that a one-way communication tool like a pre-recorded video can't do.
Yeah.
So uh, I think in the US here, Khan Academy is doing something like that, where a lot of the education is done on pre-recorded video already, but
Hmm.
they need some interactive time for questions and answers. Now, you're in Ireland, as you mentioned, the best place on earth.
Absolutely.
Just switching gears a little bit here. Um, right before COVID, a lot of people were talking about this no Brexit deal, and if you don't mind, can you share how it has impacted kind of Ireland, because you share a land border, right? So,
Yeah.
in light of this pandemic, how has that talks or impacts been the last few months?
Actually, the pandemic thing hasn't. So there was everything was dominated by Brexit for the last 4 years, it seems. So when Brexit finally happened, it was only kind of at the end where a lot of people realized actually there is a land border. We're not just an island. There is a bit on this neighboring island that is linked now to Europe. A couple of people who had in the UK from from what we could see in Ireland, hadn't really done any research or any history, hadn't taken part in any history reading of what has happened in the island of Ireland. We're just saying, well, Ireland should just leave the EU too and join us and we'll all be fine, which raised a few heckles here in Ireland. With the pandemic, there was a little bit of give and take, because in the Republic, we acted a little bit quicker on some things, and in the UK, in the UK part of it in Northern Ireland, they made some changes differently. So they registered the numbers differently as we do in the Republic, and there wasn't as much cross-border until everybody locked down. So for a time, you could only go within 2 kilometers of your home to try and make sure that the bubbles were as minimized as possible. So there was some tension north and south, but to be fair, there was an awful lot of working together, realizing that, look, we're all in this together. The virus doesn't care whether it's this part of the border or that part of the border. We need to get this sorted.
Right, right. So, well, that's good to hear, because instead of walls and borders going up with no communication, the two countries end up working together somewhat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I see. This is actually one of the things. So, with the talk of all this, everything in Brexit, there were some similarities taken between the US and the wall and building the border, and in Ireland, both north and south, nobody wanted a border. Nobody wanted a return to the hard border that we used to have. And this led to the Troubles, is the Irish way of referring to the civil war that took thousands of lives, hundreds of lives in Irish history, and all the tension between north and south. Nobody wants to return to that. In the north, in the south, in the UK, they didn't really seem to get how important or how much of a hot topic it still was in Northern Ireland until it was really brought home to them before the pandemic.
Right, right. Okay. Well, now I want to switch gears again, and I wanted to talk to you about some future stuff here. So, as we record here in the US, things have started reopening, but now it seems like we're going to have starts and fits because sudden outbreaks or increasing number in COVID cases. For your industry or for Ireland, you can kind of pick which field or which kind of subject to kind of narrow it down. But what kind of signals are you looking for a post-COVID comeback? Whether that's a business signal or just something as obvious as numbers of cases.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a somewhat lucky situation that I have a lot of friends all over Europe, people who were former business clients and colleagues. Also, my wife is Spanish, so we spend quite a bit of time in Spain. So a lot of the Spanish news filters in to our home, maybe not necessarily as much across the rest of Ireland. Spain was an epicenter, so there was Italy and Spain were the two biggest epicenters in Europe for the COVID outbreak, due to a lot of factors, not least of which was tourism. And Spain locked down. Everybody in Europe, countries locked down for months. There was a lot of talk. The Irish, we tend not to take things too seriously, especially if it's something to do with authority. We have this thing of an inherent sense of humor against, sure, it'll be fine. But every single person in Ireland knew that the governments were taking this COVID-19 thing really seriously when they closed all the pubs in Ireland on St. Patrick's Week. And they're opening today for the first time since the week of the 17th of March. So they closed on, I think it was the 16th of March. And they're opening today for the first time.
Wow.
So when pubs in Ireland are closed for that long, people are taking this seriously. Within Europe, so in Ireland, our numbers have been quite low. We're an island. We don't get we've been able to limit the number of international travelers coming in. We haven't really done the quarantine. We have said we're doing the quarantine, but it hasn't really been imposed as much. But the Irish people have been actually very good. We don't like the masks as a culture. But now, like most people are walking around, so I have a mask in my pocket all the time when I need to go to a shop, or if I go to my parents' place, it's just put the mask on straight away.
Right.
So we've taken it pretty seriously. Spain and Italy and Portugal now are starting to see spikes now that the country's opening up and people are traveling a little bit, and Spain is starting to get a little bit of tourism as well. So we've cancelled all holidays. Us as a family, like we're not going to Spain. We cancelled our holiday in Spain this year. We're gonna see how things go. So the 9th of July is a big date in Ireland for opening what they're calling these green bridges. So there's a couple of countries that, if you go to these countries, that they've done well handling the coronavirus. So when you come back, you don't have to quarantine. We're going to see as a family to see how the numbers react to that. And then we might try and get something in August, cheap flights to Spain to see my wife's family. But really, the numbers are starting to spike up a little bit now that people are starting to travel around those countries a little bit more. In Ireland, not so much, because we've only started opening up, as I said, from today. So we'll see what happens.
Right, right. Yeah. Now, business wise, you just exited the business. I don't know if you're planning to take a few years off, and you kind of take it easy. Uh, but if you
No,
were to invest again, what kind of a signal from that end that you'd like to see before you
we're,
feel, okay, this is time
I've,
to
I
cut?
I was asked this actually just the other day. Did I take a break even from exiting the language school and going into the other family business? So my last day was the 8th of December, which was a Sunday. So the Monday morning, the 9th of December, was the official first day of the new owners. And I was in our other office at 8:30 on Monday, the 9th of December. So there was no break. It was just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Now, I mean, you and I have had this conversation before, but this was more of my why. So what I wanted to be doing was in this new business, and that's the main reason that we started looking at selling the business 18 months before it actually happened. So for me, it wasn't really taking a break from one thing and moving into the other thing. For me, it was, this is what I wanted to focus on, and I wanted to make sure that my team that I'd built and worked with for so long were looked after properly in the other entity, which was the language school. So there wasn't really a, oh, thank God that's over. Now I can go and enjoy myself. It was, this needs to get done, and now I can focus on this. So that's the main driver for that. So I'm still working. So we have a small team, much smaller team. There's only 6 people really in the company at the moment. That has dropped. Everybody's working from home. We're working on a couple of new projects and able to get a lot of stuff ready for what's going to happen once the schools start opening. But right now it's very quiet.
Right, right. All right. Now, is there anything else that I haven't asked or forgot to ask you that you'd like to share?
No, I'm just, I think this is a really great idea what you're doing, and getting a flavor for different places. So I know some of the things that you're in Omni Marketing, so you cover a whole range of stuff, isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, and it was, again, this is a conversation I was having. Somebody asked me recently about, is everything now going to move online? Is everything just going to be digital clicks and that's it? And the same with education. I think you can't just have a one size fits all. Everything has got to merge with what's best for the end user, what's best for the company. So what works in one company won't work for another company. And I think in education it's the same. I think we need to be taking a more holistic look at the individual student, and not saying, well, this is the curriculum, this is the factory floor, and we drop them in at this point. They travel along the conveyor belt, and then they graduate, and then they're off into the real world.
Right.
I think there's a lot of things now where we can use things like flipped classroom and project-based learning, where we can actually help people to develop at their own pace, in their own time. Obviously, we still have we want people when they're 18 and adults to be able to live in the world independently, but maybe helping them to learn different things, because some people math, for example, might not click properly until they're about 16, 17, and then they can really see it in action. But if they're just pigeonholed from 12, they're going, look, they don't get it, they're never going to get it. I think it needs to be adapted, and I think we need to look at the different modules that can be pulled in together to help people to learn in their style and with their personality, their mindset, and the way that their brains work.
Right. Right. All right. Well, you've been very enlightening. I really appreciate, once again, you coming on and stopping by. I just want to wish you the best moving forward. So it's great that you really have found your why. And for our audience here, the why is really a set of questions to kind of find out what you're really passionate about. And I'm so glad that you actually is moving towards that. So bigger and better things are to come. So I wish you the best, and thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks a million. Hope to see
All
you
right.
soon
Thank
in
you.
3D, not 2D. In 3D, I hope to see you soon.
Yes, absolutely. Can't wait to just meet in person again. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks a million.